Hello, BookTube, and welcome to day 6 of Litmas. That's a literary event created by Adrian at Stripcover Lit, where for the 12 days of Christmas we talk about literature, all kinds of it, all genres. And day 6 is a turn for the personal. It's a little bit unusual. It's talking about your own story of literature. And I'm coming late to the party, of course, because I've had a completely full day. So I've watched, while I've been doing other things, I've watched a bunch of Litmas Day 6 videos and been just enraptured by them, by all these people sharing their personal path to the love of literature they have today. I've been amazed and envious because so many of those videos, there are a couple of exceptions, but so many of those videos have said the same thing. A variation of the same thing, which is that their love affair with literature is lifelong, that it stems from their earliest childhood, before they could read. And I envy that because it's not true with me. I came to literature late and spent most of my childhood with a species that isn't literate, and loved it. Wouldn't change it for anything. I've always said I wouldn't change my playmates, my childhood playmates, for anything. But when I came to literature late, I came to it mainly through the good graces of one person, a teacher, who I helped out of a spot of trouble, and who in reward offered me a book, but also offered me the world of literature, and was perfectly willing to be a patient teacher and guide to that world. And I can't ever repay that. I didn't realize it at the time, but it's grown and grown and grown, and led me, of course, to want to join that world. That also has been a subtext of a lot of Litmas Day 6 videos, is not just passive, but active participation in this world that we all love. And that manifested itself with me, definitely. I read everything I could get my hands on once I was shown that literature was this incredible adventure that I could love. Once I saw that, I read everything to make up for lost time. But I also wanted to participate, and eventually got the chance to write book reviews under my own name and assumed name for a few years, and really loved it. But I was also frustrated by a lot of its limitations, the back padding and the log rolling and the whatnot, and decided to leave it for selling books in retail bookstores. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me to do both at the same time. I kind of wish I had, but I can't regret the times that I had selling books in bookstores. It was largely great times. They were brought to an end because of two factors. At the end, because some friends and I had made a literary journal, and it had started to gain a little traction, and enough traction for some of us to get into other reviewing venues. By the end of my retail bookselling career, I was once again a freelancing book critic. And I was starting to love it so much, and it was starting to be lucrative enough so that time in the bookstore felt more and more like a distraction from what I really wanted to be doing. And in addition to that, factor number 2 was that over time, at least in my own experience, the management of retail bookstores became worse. Smaller-minded, dumber, coarser, more autocratic. And there eventually came a point where I was realizing not only am I not enjoying this as much anymore, except for my coworkers, most of whom I treasured, but also it's costing me money. It's time where I'm just standing here doing whatever somebody tells me to do, that I could be spending either writing something for money or pitching something to write for money. So eventually I moved entirely back to the world of book reviewing. And also book editing. I remained a literary journal editor, and I've had success with that. And it's been the luck has played the part as always does. But I'm incredibly grateful to be back in that world, back in these conversations, these multi-voiced conversations, because there's a whole world of readers out there, and the world of that conversation when a new book appears and all of a sudden there's a chorus of voices talking about it. I love the fact that there are more of those than ever. But I also love the fact that I'm doing it, you know, for a public audience, that I'm doing it in the way that I did in the past, that I'm doing it for editors and for readers, and maybe in a slightly more formal setting. One way or another, I wouldn't go back to retail bookselling, and I don't think I would go to anything else. And that is now, I was realizing as I was thinking about making this video, I may not have started as early as the rest of you, but literature is now my whole life. There's virtually, aside from Frida, there's virtually no part of my life that isn't that. It's all of my enthusiasm. New books in the mail, new reading experiences every day, new challenges in explaining those reading experiences to an audience. But also it's my profession, it's my fulfillment, it's my monthly budget. It's all I do. In all kinds of aspects of it, the editing, the estimating, the planning, the plotting, the pitching, the writing, it's all I do. And yet, although that's my story for literature, the story's not over, because I'm thinking ahead to 2018, when I have two things I would like to do to add to this story of literature. I'd like to increase the number of places where my work appears. And I'd also like to write. Not NaNoWriMo, not fan fiction, not private stuff that I circulate, Samidstat style, but an actual book that I will work on front to back and then work to sell. So that in addition to being a critic, I will also be an author. And I'm going to give that, finally, a concerted try in 2018. So those two things. I'm going to look for more book reviewing work, to be part of more conversations in front of more audiences. And I'm also going to write a book, and we'll see what comes of both of those. But I guess the point of my video here, it's shorter and I think less interesting than the day 6 videos that the rest of you are making. My point is that I started late, but I'm making up for lost time, because literature now is my whole world. That story has grown to encompass my whole life, and that's it. I'm afraid it's a little lackluster compared to all the stories that you're all telling about the endless adventures that you had in all the different time periods of your life. I'm so envious of that. But that's it for me. That is my Litmas Day 6. And tomorrow, I think, if I remember correctly, the prompt for tomorrow is to discuss one of your own poems. And that's not going to work for me, but I think, if I remember correctly, Adrian allowed that we could extend that to any example of something that we do. And if I remember that correct, I'll check his video again, but if I remember that correctly, then the option that I'm going to do is to talk about journaling, which I have done forever. I've never talked about it on this channel before, and I'd love to do that. So if I'm right about that, we'll see each other then. And no matter what, I am, of course, going to do Litmas all the way to the end, and so should the rest of you. But if it's... if the option really is share a poem that you wrote, I don't know what I'm going to do, because the only kind of poetry I write is not shareable. Maybe I'll read a chunk, if I have to do that, I'll read a chunk from my NaNoWriMo work, which is half poetry. That might be fun. That might work. But one way or another, we'll convene tomorrow and find out. And in the meantime, keep making those videos, because this Litmas stuff is just amazing. And I'll wrap it up for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.